My name is Sharon McRoder, and I am the Executive Director, and I'm very happy to see you here today. I just want to thank, as Rich mentioned, our very lean but dedicated team of leaders without whose help this summit would not have existed. So I'd like to recognize the hard work of Sue Rial, Suzanne Kelly, Lisa Stankus, Lisa Parcell, Kathy Stankus, Rich Nelson, and then the social media and marketing expertise of Jess Leong, Christine Upton, and Joe Morden and Joe's fantastic team at the TMV group. I would like to go over a couple housekeeping items. First of all, attendees, your audio and video will be kept off the entire summit today, but we do want to hear from you. So after each session, there will be a 5 or 10-minute Q&A. And at that point, you can ask questions, or at any point, actually, you can ask questions through the Q&A function of Zoom at the bottom of your screen. If you roll over with your mouse, you'll see the Q&A. Please don't post questions in chat. In fact, I'm not sure you're able to. So just go right to the Q&A and let us know what your questions are. And if they're aimed at a particular panelist, let us know that as well. You can also choose to ask a question anonymously. So there's a box that says, send anonymously. Check that before you send your question. Now, if we don't get to your question during the summit, we do plan on answering all questions in writing after the summit and post it on our website. So know that we do hear you. We will answer you, if not live, then eventually in writing. Now, if you're having technical difficulties during the summit, please email info@rarekidney.org. And this event is being recorded, and parts or all of the sessions today will be posted on our RKDF's YouTube channel, on our ViewMedi channel, that's VUMEDI, which is where a lot of nephrologists and medical professionals go for quick information on important topics. And so we have a channel there to share information, and will be used in our social media posts. Okay, on to today's session. During today's patient program, you'll learn about what it takes to bring a promising treatment to market, which is just very exciting that we're even talking at this point about that part of the process. As Rich said, it's coming. It's coming very soon. Second, why patient registries are critical for advancing research and for helping to bring a treatment to market. We'll learn about how to talk with your nephrologist about genetic testing, given that genetic testing is the most definitive and, not to mention, the least invasive way to diagnose ADTKD. And in the end, scientists can't learn about ADTKD, and scientists can't find a treatment or a cure if they can't find ADTKD patients. So again, as Rich mentioned, that's what we're all about at the foundation, supporting patients, finding patients, and helping to pave the way for a clinical trial on the horizon. And then in our final session, you will meet 3 RKDF volunteers who will share what they do and why they chose to volunteer for RKDF. And very shamelessly, we're hoping that will inspire many of you to contact us to find a way to volunteer. We're always looking for help. We always need expertise and dedication, and there's so much more we could do if we had more bodies to do it. So that should be an exciting session as well. But like yesterday, we're going to begin today's session with the voice of ADTKD patients and a non-ADTKD family member, because as a patient advocacy organization, we believe it's critical to center the patient voice in everything we do. So let me start by introducing you to Christine, her sister Sherry, and Sherry's husband, David. Now, all 3 are fantastic ambassadors for RKDF, spreading the word about the foundation, about the disease, about what nephrologists need to know to better serve and improve care for patients. And we are just so grateful for their hard work, and we're really happy that they're here today. So hi, everyone. Thank you. I do want to mention too that David's company, the Vistra Corporation, donated $3,000 last year toward this goal. So we're very grateful also for their support. All right, why don't I then kick it off with Christine and Sherry, and I guess Christine, you'll go first, share some family history and talk about what it's like living with ADTKD.
Sure. Good morning, Sharon and everybody. I just want to thank you for inviting me, my sister, and my brother-in-law to speak today. The sessions yesterday were incredible, very inspiring, and I'm grateful for the tireless work that everybody's doing to push us towards a cure for my family and many other families with CKD. So my story is shortly after I got married in 1989. I was in for a routine physical and found out that my blood pressure was pretty high, and did some blood work, found out that my creatinine was 2.0, and immediately warning bells went off because my dad had also had a kidney transplant 4 years before that. So I quickly was referred to a nephrologist and went down the road pretty quickly. Within 2 years, I was on peritoneal dialysis and received a transplant in 1994. So this year marks 32 years out from my transplant, which I am deeply grateful for. It was from the National Donor List. And it came 6 months after I started dialysis, which is pretty rare to be on the national list. So I was super grateful. So like I said, my dad had also had kidney failure. So kind of warning bells were going off, like, could this be genetic for our family? And so our family's pretty passionate about genealogy. So we had a lot of records to kind of go back and see if there was any rhyme or reason to why we were all getting kidney failure. And so I'm going to share my screen now a little bit about that kind of shows our family tree. If you can see it. Can you see it? I just want to see if everybody can see it yet.
Oh, it's loading now.
There we go. So we've traced it back to my Irish great grandfather, who died in 1902 at 67 years old. And back then they called it Bright's disease, which must be like an early sort of name for kidney failure that we don't really know, but that's what was listed on his death certificate. And then he passed it down to my great grandmother, who died in 1940 at 69 years old. And also there were markers that she had some sort of renal dysfunction, and who passed it then to my grandfather, who died at 1953 at 46 with uremia. And then he had two children, my dad and my aunt, and both of them ended up in renal failure. And my dad was 58 years old when he died. He was diagnosed in 83. He started hemodialysis for several years and ended up with a transplant and was doing great. And then he unfortunately passed away in 94, not from his kidney transplant. And his only sister, like I said, she also was, she decided to do peritoneal dialysis and did that for a little while and ended up with a transplant. And so we've really just now kind of, we're down to like my generation and now my children. And so it's passed to Sherry and I, and two of our other siblings do not have the gene. We've all been tested now. And the same on my aunt's side with her children. They were tested. Two of them have had transplants, and one of her grandchildren had a transplant. So we are very passionate about finding a cure for this, and so appreciate Anna I've been to the Broad and met Anna and Jillian and all their lab of young people that are working tirelessly, and just so encouraged by what they've done. And I just am so thankful that we're close to hopefully having a cure for this. And it certainly would affect our family. And we would be extremely grateful. So I'm going to pass it now to my sister, who's going to more talk about how we got connected with Dr. Blyer.
Yes, so good morning. As Chris said, as a result of our family history, we decided to start being checked for high blood pressure and checking our creatinine. When I was in college, we would get it checked yearly, even though they told us that it was not hereditary at that point. But you get that feeling inside of you that something just isn't quite right about that statement. And so that propelled us to be a little bit more proactive and be self-advocates and try to find answers for ourselves. And so it wasn't until I was 28, I believe, that I started looking at newspaper articles and found a newspaper article about a researcher from Syracuse University that had done a familial study on a family about an hour away from us that had a genetic kidney disease. And of course, that piqued my interest. And I was very curious if this researcher would then be interested in taking a look at our family. So I contacted his office at Syracuse University, and he said, sure, send me your family tree. And so we did, and we put the markers on there for who had transplants, who had kidney failure. And he was very curious and very interested. And it wasn't shortly after that that I ended up in the emergency room with very high blood pressure and also an elevated creatinine level. And I contacted him and said, would you take me on as your patient? And of course, he obliged. And that started the ball rolling with our family of being in the limelight of researchers and physicians. And as a result of that, he had a understudy that was willing to come to my grandmother's calling hours and do DNA testing on any family member that was interested in being just tested at that point for their research, not for us to find out necessarily if we had a genetic condition, because at that point, there wasn't anything known. This was 2002, I believe. And so we had our DNA tested with just a cheek swab and some blood work, and then became connected with Dr. Blyer and followed Dr. Blyer's information. He contacted us regularly, and we met with him in Syracuse when he did a group speaking engagement to anyone with MUC1 or UMOD at that point. And from there, we just kept following online, and I came across Mr. Nelson's social media post and contacted him and said I was interested in learning more about the Rare Kidney Disease Foundation, and had a wonderful phone call with him and talked about what I could do to be supportive to the foundation, and became an ambassador at that point and have been working hard to spread the word about the Rare Kidney Disease Foundation and the work that we've been trying to accomplish through that. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that later too. But I'm going to pass it on to my husband and let him share a little bit with you about what it's like to be a part of this family with many members with rare kidney disease.
Good morning. You mute your mic. Okay. So that should hopefully work out. No, your volume, I guess. So unfortunately, we are in the same house, husband and wife, so that sometimes works in our favor, but not when we're doing conferencing on two different laptops. So my name is Dave, married to Sherry since 1988. Met her and her family as her dad was in transplant mode and got the transplant, just received the transplant, I believe, when I met her. Um, so I've seen a little bit on the family side and not understanding the disease or not understanding exactly what was going to happen or that it was even going to affect anybody else in the family. From a family member, an outsider, or sometimes my wife would say, "Hey, you're going to give the outlaw perspective." Um, it is one of uncertainty because you're not sure what's going on. And I think that that's important to understand that that's an okay feeling. But then when you get into the role of being a supportive husband to my wife and brother-in-law to Christine, you realize there's important factors that go along with this. The one is self-advocacy, especially in the earlier days when it wasn't considered a hereditary disease, and when doctors were trying to finding out information was kind of difficult because the doctors themselves didn't have the information. So you had to be a self-advocate of getting tested or taking a look at different labs to find out what was going on, and then talking amongst ourselves about well, what do we see? What do we think's happening? Um, Another big one is support. As a family member, and although not having the disease myself, we're the support chain. We are sometimes emotional support, sometimes we're physical support, especially when the patients are maybe struggling. In this case, my wife. Um, it was difficult, but at that point, you start drawing on your personal expertise and training. My background is a little bit of military, but it's also in the engineering field. And so there were parts of the dialysis where the system is overwhelmed. And I think when we started dialysis, there were thousands of patients getting dialysis. And so they set you up with a routine to get your, in this case, it was peritoneal for my wife, to get your percentage bags correct for the peritoneal dialysis. And they can get you on target. But really, my wife's background in teaching and my background in engineering and some chemistry, we were able to better regulate her peritoneal dialysis by putting the correct percentage bags on. But it takes involvement. It takes using what we have personal expertise on. Some people's backgrounds are different, and when they can pull on that expertise to help their loved ones, then they're better part of that support. I think learning expertise in other fields, being open to research, the ATDKD when it was named was a big deal for us when we found out that it had a name. It was a potential a huge breakthrough for us because you could actually go, okay, we have this in our family, and now what? And I think through that and through Dr. Blair and now Richard Nelson having the RKDF, it gives us more of a focus. So when you get to that point and you realize that part of the problem is information dispersion, then you become active. If you are passionate about helping your loved ones, your family, and others that may be in this situation, then you start asking, well, what can I do? The researchers are doing their deal. That is not in my wheelhouse. I respect what they do, the hours they put in, but what can I do to help? Part of that is fundraising. I mean, I became a volunteer so I could help with fundraising. I also became a volunteer so I could go to a nephrologist's office or mail packets out. And I think part of what she mentioned at the beginning was that my company got involved. Well, that's because my company is it's big. It's based out of Dallas, but we're more like a family. And so when something is affecting somebody in our company, our team members rally. So when they heard that not only was this disease named, but that we were volunteering for it, they wanted to be a part. So I talked with our community contributions and committee down in Dallas. I got them on board as long as some questions were answered. I worked back and forth with RKDF about answering what they had for questions about this uh, relatively new um, uh, organization. And then my teams and my other manager teams at work put together a day for when we got together, and we did 500 emailing, well, not emailing, mailing sessions. We got together to do 500 packets. So we did the envelopes and the what we call testimony letters, one introducing them to the RKDF, one introducing them to a patient, which was my wife, and introducing them to what it was about and that we were seeking a treatment and how we were seeking the treatment. And those packets went out to different dialysis clinics, different nephrologists, different doctors groups, not only in the United States, but a few actually went international. So when you get to the point where it's involvement, then you realize that it's a passion. And when you see things like this happening today, I'm going to end with this, that you end up at the point of gratefulness, which is where I am. This affects our kids, little emotion. This affects grandkids. If by our passion we can help their lives to be better lives with a possibility of a treatment, then it's worth working for. Thank you for your time. I do appreciate all the members. I appreciate being able to speak, and I really love what you are all are doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dave and Sherry and Chris, for helping us understand your journey going on over 25 years, just your own, let alone what you went through with your father and your aunt. So thank you for sharing that today.